Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Vito X DINO. My name is Vito Delsante. His name is Dean Haspiel.
What's up, y'all? I'm Dean Haspiel.
We got a very special guest today. He is a filmmaker, a cartoonist, and the brother of Greta. Everyone welcome Owen Kline.
That's right. Brother of Greta and my grandfather cast Art Carney in The Honeymooners, and it's North.
Are you kidding?
Nothing else. The yeah, my He was he was there at the Jackie Gleason show and was with him before that. The Cavalcade started. He did all the early variety shows, and he came into television in '47. You know.
Wow.
So you're a family of entertainers, let's say,
That's
right?
right. Yeah, he was like a wrangler of entertainers. He really did have a roster and was kept variety television and television specials as a staple all through the 70s, So like yeah, but he designed the set of the Honeymooners, like the original sketch, like it was based on his Coldwater flat he grew up in the Bronx. He was like a Bronx Jew obsessed with cowboys and Indians that eventually produced for Johnny Cash and the Johnny Cash show. So he did all this amazing and foreign circuses for television. He really ran the whole gamut of and created all the first he created all the first game shows, So $64,000 question, all the devices on that show and the theatrics of that show. He came up with all that stuff. There was like an IBM sorting machine that, like, a million questions, it would shuffle them all along. It was like a Rube Goldberg device that would, like, and then it would hit the bottom and one card would drop. And he came up with that. They all had the same question printed on them. It was just the for the visual
The theatrics
exactly,
of
yeah.
that. What
Presentation.
was his name again? What's his name?
Presentation. Joseph Cates. Joe Cates.
Let me ask you a question because this is something that I grew up with and I didn't understand until I matured what was around me as a kid. So like I'm on planet Earth because Shelley Winters, the actress,
Mhm.
introduced my parents, right?
I know
So
that.
she was my godmother, right? But I'm hanging out as a little kid around De Niro or Al Pacino or Farley Granger or a number of actors and
Harley
Shelley,
Granger.
only
Wow.
Shelley. And I'm like, whatever, I don't care. I'm a kid, right? And it isn't until I have context later in life that I was like, oh my God, like I'd hang out at Lee Strasberg's house, I'm like, now I'd be like, oh my God, the questions I'd want to ask. As a kid growing up, were you aware of the legacy or was it just like, yeah, whatever, those people until later on?
Yeah, I mean, it's the people that really none of that matters, and people are people, of course, yada yada. But like the people that actually mean something and matter to you as artists are the people that I feel really lucky that I was able to be around people like Steve Martin or Martin Short or whatever. But really, my grandfather was the big, like, he was, his world was even more amazing, and like he produced Anne Bancroft specials and would go on vacation with Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft to Hawaii, all this crazy shit, like his world of all of that old. I have his address book, and it's like, because he did all of variety and was like a Friars Club guy too. It was like, oh, Soupy Sales and Red Buttons, and then Chris Christopherson, like, what are these names all together? And Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira, and it's like this. He's like represented that old Rodney Dangerfield and his address and phone number in that book. Like, it's just insane to
Mm-hmm.
me. But so that old world is because it's bygone probably, and because like the personalities were just incredible then, obviously, like, and those are real acts that he would book and that he knew as people, and that amazes me. But yeah, I mean, I was really really lucky, and my dad, even like, my parents actually don't have a lot of star-studded friends, but like my dad, where he's the theater world people that
Mm-hmm.
he was friends like Mike Nichols or something like that. It was like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, this guy did The Graduate, like, and then everything else, of course, and the Nichols May albums. Like, I just, I was so lucky to like be able to talk to those people and know them a little. It reminds me, and I share this with Drew Friedman and you, but Drew Friedman, his dad was Bruce J. Friedman. He was like in the like sort of the literary version of that. So he grew up around Norman Mailer and all these people, but like he was going to Groucho Marx's house when he was a kid, like just the craziest, Dennis Wilson was there, like crazy fucking stories like that. And his dad was just kind of, well, I mean, his dad wrote a couple of movies and he wrote Splash, and he wrote the short story to the Heartbreak Kid, so he's in that Elaine May club. But Neil Simon wrote that script and whatever. He's done. He wrote Doctor Detroit, the Dan Aykroyd movie.
My God.
Yeah. He had a really weird career, but he was like Drew's dad, Bruce J. Yeah, he wrote what's it called? This book called Stern. That's fantastic, and it's sort of like the book that launched Philip Roth into, like, it's like about like a emasculating Jewish assimilation kind of story, like A Serious Man or one of those kinds of like Rothian kind of characters. It's not quite as perved out, but like, so he was like a really important literary figure and wrote all this funny stuff in Playboy too. So he's it's not many cartoonists that grew up with that. Like obviously I grew up in less of a film world, but like more like, because we were in LA, it was like New York, and so it was like my dad was these theater world people, and Steve Martin was just still like Wild and Crazy Guys, like my favorite comedy albums. So that still flips me out a little bit. Can never actually wrap my head around that one.
As a cartoonist, Owen, and we'll get into funny pages a little, shortly, but like when I first met you, or you came to me at Rocket Ship, and this is how I remember it, is it's like this young kid comes out, practically taps me on the shoulder and goes, basically you said, "Oh, you're one of my favorite cartoonists," or you admired me or something like that. And I'm looking at you, I'm going, why do I know this kid's face? Why do I know? And I think you had just done The Squid and the Whale maybe a year ago or something.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
All right. And we're at Rocket Ship in Brooklyn. And then I'm trying to like put two and two together. I'm like, why do I know your face? And then you're like, "Mom, come over here." And then your mom walks over, and I'm like,
yeah.
Get the hell out of here. It's Phoebe Cates, your mom. Like, what is going on? And she was so sweet. And then I was like, "Oh, you're the kid, this awesome actor that was in Squid and the Whale," right? So I figured you're just going to go down that route. You're going to be an actor, and you still are an actor. But the thing that we connected on, because then, I took you to a couple of Comic-Con shows, I remember. In fact, your dad came with us one time. But I was like, it wasn't until Funny Pages that I was like, oh, this guy likes old-timey comics. He likes history. He wants to do older stuff. Like, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what informs your sensibility as a cartoonist and a filmmaker, but as a cartoonist?
Well, I guess like beyond just like old comics, obviously the first comics you read as a kid are like, for me, was like newspaper comics and everything. But yeah, I just was interested in cartooning before I was interested in comics. Like I loved drawing, and I was like a daydreaming kid that drew in the back of the class and everything, and drew cartoons and drew my friends. And you probably had that too, where it's just like as a kid, it's like, it's like the first attention you really get that's generated from yourself of like, oh, draw this person or draw that person, and people getting excited.
And you draw them funny, and you make them like look uglier, and everyone laughs, and then you get the attention.
And you exaggerate. Oh, someone has big nostrils or whatever the fuck it is. You could zero in on that, and I did that and observed that pretty early. And I was interested in like running towards extremes in general, like just in content and then it was, once you saw Crumb, then of course it became like explicit, drawing that stuff. And I had like a teacher that would like, he was like the Japanese and creative writing teacher, and ran the comics club, but he would like encourage me to do all this dirty like drawing, like fat women with their tits out on the whiteboard with like big bushes, and he'd just be laughing and videotaping it, like totally inappropriate. But that's sort of a little bit in Funny.
That's the first scene in Funny Pages.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a teacher who's kind of actually like, nurturing this like impish kind of thing in this kid's artistic streak or whatever. But so like, yeah, we really just started with like, how to draw cartoon books, where like I had the first one I had was this like, it was like one of these like goofy New Jersey, like how to draw cartoony cartoons, like type of, like book cartoon teachers. This guy like Bruce Bruce Blitz. Sorry, I had a brain fart. Bruce Blitz. So he was like, I got at the Scholastic Book Fair as a kid or whatever, and what second grade, and it had like the little wheel of like you could make four different faces at once. There's like a potato shape where it's like kind of two circles. There's an 8 ball that's connected. There's a triangle face, this and that, and you can put like the googly eyes on this guy and the nose on that guy, and like a big, funny like sharp teeth on this, or just like a long, Dick Van Dyke type like smile that just goes across closer to the big red nose. All these different funny hair, and then you just start like mixing and matching all these things, and it was like about expressions and characters, and at first it's just the shapes you can draw and the shapes that appeal to you, and then you start looking up from the page and not just imitating other cartoons, and then kind of bringing in seeing all the shapes and things of people and observing that. And, I never was like a caricature artist at a county fair or anything, but like that was like I even looked at what those people did and was kind of paying attention to what they were doing when I was a kid. You know what I'm saying? You did too, I'm sure.
Listen,
anyone who drew and also was like loved cartoons on TV, you know what I mean? Loved like, loved the old Warner Brothers cartoons they'd play on Cartoon Network before there was Boomerang, loved the Bob Clampett show and Tex Avery reboots, all that stuff I loved as a kid, the golden age. And the earlier stuff and the silent cartoons and the rubber hose shit and all of the Fleischer. Like I loved all that stuff. And it was mainly also because of my friend Charlie Judkins, who was from that store Rocket Ship I met. He was like obsessed with old cartoons and humor comics and stuff.
Right. Okay. All right. It's funny because I watched Funny Pages again last night, knowing we would talk today. And it was the second time around that I noticed a lot of the music or the soundtrack was like old time, like little giggles and laughs and like all
novelty.
kinds of
it was like kind of like mostly like mid-century, like 50s, 60s novelty stuff, novelty doo-wop, like noisier records. Yeah.
Right. And I thought it also kind of like gave other context. So you have the visual and the performing and acting and the cinema of it, but then the sound also brought a certain kind of sensibility and cinema to it. And again, but it all felt like you have the Tijuana Bibles. You have like, you have artists like Rick Altergott and who's the other guy? The other
Johnny Ryan did all the kids' art.
Johnny Ryan did right. And so, you've got kind of like Fantagraphics type, memoir, but also absurd, corny.
Yeah, I would call what Johnny does screwball cartooning, and I would call what Rick does, although he does have like, kitschy, or if you want to call it sensibility, but like it really comes from a very pure, like I feel like it's a pretty esoteric Wally Wood kind of style that he draws.
Absolutely.
Very lavish, like, not EC Mad, or I don't know how you pin it together, because it's very realistic. It's super he's an amazing draftsman, amazing at rendering. He originally was supposed to do the kids' art, but it was way too sophisticated for a teenager.
Right.
Then that kid would have been like a super genius, but you just didn't believe that it came from his hand. Like we couldn't even afford someone to be inking these drawings. So I was inking Johnny's drawings.
Wow.
We had to make the kid left-handed because I'm left-handed. And
so
I was there like inking, I had Johnny draw it all in stages, like first of all, Johnny, it looked like, okay, he the gear that he works at this point, it's like a very accomplished. Like he has that Hanna-Barbera. His stuff looks like very like simple, kind of somewhat geometric, thick lined, like Saturday morning cartoons or something. He has that sensibility. But it was like it felt like a throwbacky style. He just draws funny. He draws funny and isn't afraid to draw funny, and not there's no like serious, he doesn't have any like inhibitions in his drawing. So I felt like perfectly casting for a 16-year-old kid. He really just did his thing for the most part in terms of like, it's not his recognizable characters, and I just liked the idea. It was just like, it just felt kind of interesting to be able to write dialogue. I'd written the movie already and then cast Johnny as the hand in some way. But then you get to write a character around someone who already has a sensibility as an artist. So you have a little piece of that worldview to help you create a
Hmm.
character. And it's not
Hmm.
just some snotty Holden Caulfield. Like he comes with his own ethos along with
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
forms them.
Yep.
Is
Vito.
there a reason why you didn't do the cartooning yourself for those scenes? Were you
I was
not?
out of practice at the time, and I was had the writing gear so much. I had spent like 2 years drafting and drafting the movie. I went through so many drafts. It was like to sort of switch over. It's like I just wanted to create fresh, like portfolio and a style for this kid. And like Johnny just came with such an ability to just crank it out. I would not have been able to storyboard and direct the movie and also done like the caricatures of the guy in the courtroom, the defense attorney's office, public defender's office, et cetera, et cetera. Like I just didn't really have the time to nail those things. It was like Johnny's just was the perfect person because you could just knock it out. And when we were working on the film and you're changing things as you go because it's a small film and you got to work with the resources you have, we could call him up and I could just say like we need something like this we ended up shooting this guy and maybe we just want this one corner drawing of this one character as the in the corner of the sketchbook at this face, and he just bang it out.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Part of the movie for people who haven't seen it, but you establish a kid who has a mentor. Spoiler, it's right in the second scene. The mentor dies, and then he's rudderless a little bit, and he's trying to find his way. He doesn't want to go to college. He wants to make comics, right? And at some point, he has to get a job because he's going solo against his parents' wishes. And then in going solo, he discovers this guy that was like a color separator at Image Comics. And he's, every character in this movie is like a misfit. I don't
Yeah.
think there's a quote normal person, if you want to call anybody normal in the world. There's not one normal person in this movie. Anyway, so this guy, and I forget the name of the character.
Wallace?
Barry? Was it Barry?
Barry
No.
is the in the basement. He's the
Yeah,
guy.
he's one of the roommates.
Wallace,
Barry's my favorite character, by the way. Okay, so Wallace is the yeah. Wait, by the way, who is Barry? Who is that actor?
Michael Townsend Wright. He was a one of the performers on the Uncle Floyd show, but he's a vaudevillian, like he does like Laurel to another guy's Hardy and like a county fairs and stuff. But he's also acted on TV and stuff. Just have to let.
Yep. Yep.
I gotta say, I gotta know how this this gentleman here, like he was born the year I graduated from high school.
Oh wow.
Okay. Like he was
Yeah.
born a couple of months after I graduated. So
Right.
how, and the thing is, what's funny is that like a lot of those things, and how I was just talking about how you were born a couple of months after I graduated from high school. And there's a funny thing that I'm noticing by talking with you, like in the short time that we've been talking, is that there's a lot of these older pop culture references that are informing your work and informing your discussion and stuff. Like my grandfather was a World War II vet. My father was a Vietnam vet, and I had more in common with my grandfather than I did with my father. So I was always like, absorbing all of the 1930s Marx Brothers, Errol Flynn, Tyrone Power, that kind of stuff. I was absorbing all of that from him, even like Benny Goodman, a lot of the music as well.
Yeah.
And I don't like, I can see where my generation was closer to his, but you're a generation still removed from that. So
What year was he born?
my grandfather was, I want to say 1910, 1912, something like that.
My grandfather, yeah, so that's like my dad's dad was like 1911. It's like my dad's born in 47 and his dad was born in like 1911, 1915, like somewhere around in like the early teens. My grandfather, on my mother's side, who I was the closest with, he died when I was 7, and he's the guy I've been talking about.
Right.
This sort of variety, this major variety producer, and he also directed some great films. He did these great exploitation movies. Did this movie with Sal Mineo that's kind of like a proto Taxi Driver called Who Killed Teddy Bear. Everyone should go and see the uncut director's sleazier cut. It's finally out. It was a heavily bootleg movie all through the 80s, 90s, but Who Killed Teddy Bear is out now through Vinegar Syndrome. Go seek out the blue. And there's going to be a run of it at Film Forum in the summer, where they reissued in the 90s too. But so my grandfather's 1924. And so it was like same kind of thing where it's just like when he died, I got his Louis Armstrong CDs. You know what I mean? I knew he loved like Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire and then I had an uncle who was into Jerry Lewis and would go, "Hey lady," and you do all that stuff. And so you just sort of like these figures and these characters are just so much more colorful than even like the cartoons when I was a kid or something. It's just like you just kind of adopt a grandparent's love. It is generational for these things, and you learn from them more than anyone else in a
Well,
way.
that's like Dean was saying that Barry was the character that he liked the most, and I can see that. Like, I wouldn't say that that influence was in Barry, like the Barry character, but Barry does have some of those likes and affinity. You know, like the war movie he's watching, the comics that he was flipping through. You know, like it seems like he's got that kind of. I wouldn't say that Miles, not Miles, the main character. I forgot his name now.
Robert.
Robert, yeah. I wouldn't say that Robert had those like that kind of influence necessarily, um, but like it could have been an interesting dynamic. I think just seeing how your grandfather and you had that kind of connection, and then maybe he would have had that same connection with Barry or something if Barry wasn't so damaged like all the other human beings in Robert's world.
Wallace doesn't have any kind of cultural connection to Robert. It's sort of just like, and that is an antiquated thing. Like I feel like a teenage kid, modern kid now, the movie kind of exists in a comic book world. And the comic book world, like in a like it exists within a comic. Like it doesn't exist in
Oh
the
yeah,
world, but it exists in like it's this kid with all these vacuum sealed pockets, right? So he's going to comic book stores and is burying himself in the back issues. You know what I mean? The old dusty back issue bins. And it's this all this stuff that hasn't really been even touched and is just collecting dust, whether it's apartment spaces or this courthouse where these culturalists, there's either like old culture, bygone culture, or just like culturalistness exists. And that's sort of, I guess, what, the settings in the movie and its version of New Jersey are doing, I guess. But if I squint at it, I guess. But yeah, Wallace is like this culturalist character, and like he was a part of the MCU. You don't even really know if he likes comics or is passionate about it, but he has an idea of it and it's his craft, and he talks about it and thinks about it like it's coal mining. There's no joy in it, and it only brings him pain thinking about his past in it. So that's like a facet of a kind of artist and a kind, like maybe at one point his passion was clear and he was in touch with Rob Liefeld or whatever the fuck he was into, but it's not that it's really like this, the version of it does a kid now would just find Johnny Ryan. Like I wrote to Johnny Ryan when I was 14. I have a letter in Angry Youth Comics between like Mike Diana and Al Jaffe. I'm fucking mad. Right. In the back of Angry Youth Comics. So like even at 14 when I was a kid, it's like 2005 or something, like 2004, whatever it would be, like even I was able to find if you like that stuff and you can hit that vein and want to humor comics, whatever, you find the person that makes sense. Like his teacher, clearly at the beginning of the movie, this kid's teacher nourished this sort of impish Mad Magazine thing in him, but yeah, Wallace doesn't have that. And Michael Wright's character in some way, but you just see the connection. It's like a little lost, weird connection with him and Miles, weirdly. Like Robert just kind of likes the space and is like what it represents or something. But Miles and sits down and with Barry in his bed, and they're talking about Joe Franklin and this old movie, and Robert Wagner, and like all these weird references going to Joe Franklin. They're talking about the Hoppity Goes to Town or whatever, Gulliver's Travel.
Gulliver's Travels, yeah.
Yeah, like there was an animated Fleischer movie of Gulliver's Travels, and so like, and you just see they genuinely link up over like, Gulliver's Travels. Just it's a certain kind of old timey person. It's like not everybody knows that thing, but like if you know it and you're into old the kid's into funny animal comics and Carl Barks and adventure comics. He's just a lost kid. And then here's a guy who's into that too. And they link up genuinely. Everything else is a completely missed, lost connection between them. But But you still like learn from your elders, and it's like your grandfather going like Tyrone Powers, and you sit there with him and you're trying to understand it, and you have to sort of acclimate yourself through how he's looking at it. Like, that is like learning how to look at stuff and how to see the world in a way and
I
see
mean,
the
absolutely,
art.
absolutely. My father used to show me all kinds of movies on a 16 millimeter projector, not
Yeah,
even on the TV,
yeah.
before VHS, and we'd
Rent it
talk
from the
about,
library or wherever you rent them
right,
from
right.
catalogs.
And it's interesting because you talk about, I was trying to get to Wallace for a second because he's the curveball in the movie for me. When I first saw it, I was thrown off by him because when he finally decides, oh, I can make some money off this kid, maybe I'll teach him some comics to make $300 or whatever, right? And then he's drawing in this Rob Liefeld way, and I kept thinking, wait, this is the antithesis of what this guy, the kid, the protagonist wants. But then he's kind of like getting into it, and then when Miles shows up, Miles is actually has the arc that I was more interested in because he's the quiet kid in the back going, I'm just doing my comics, and he's unassuming in a lot of ways, but there's a real power to Miles and his character, and then he's the one. Are they yelling about soul versus form? Was that the two
Yeah,
words?
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Craft. Yeah, 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 exactly.
Basically, craft versus
So he does say it's
authenticity.
form. Yeah, yeah, totally.
And I thought, oh my God, Miles is the hero. Miles is the hero, and he gets stabbed in the head. Like,
Yeah,
and
it's
there's
like
this
it's like
cathartic moment. You know,
it's like the Odyssey is actually his or something. But like yeah, it's all these different voices in my head. It's all these different kinds of cartoonists and kinds of artists that I've known. You know what I mean? It's like I had, and I was thinking, it's like thinking about it in terms of different kinds of artists and kinds of mentors and something. And there are mentors that push you, like the guy at the beginning is pushing him, and he's missing that in his life, the kid after that. And that teacher actually really wants, and I had this teacher who was like, you know, he would get mad at you if you weren't doing the work. I just finished this 4-page comic for this magazine, and it was a lot of work to sort of get back in the groove with the layouts and just inking it and getting in the flow of a 4-page comic and making it all work. But I needed to nail it because once I knew, it was like, all right, it's not just going to be the first 4 pages of this fucking magazine. They're putting it at the beginning. And I could only hear my Japanese teacher and the guy who ran the comics club at my high school, which was like a haven for these kids. It was like this blue room, like the one in the movie, and all these outsider kids, like, and the kids that were drawing anime in there, he would be like, Owen, show them Gary Panther and underground stuff, and like try to loosen everybody up. You know what I mean? It was like some weird kid and some like weird kid in a park. I would like show him like some nerdy kid like how to do it. It was like, but then there were also the weird art kids, and one kid was drawing like more Chester Brown kind of stuff and autobiographical, and like, but he nurtured all these young artists. But he would be like, don't do a Hajj. You have one, like, you can go and fail math, but then if you're going to go and fail math or get a D in math, you have to we do one publication a year of Olga, the only high school comic book magazine, like you got to fucking nail it. And he said, don't do a Hajj. HHA is a half-ass job. So it was like, I really still hear his voice in a way whenever I sit and do something. He'd throw like expo markers at you if you weren't paying attention. He wanted people to fucking do the work. He wanted people to
it's like Full Metal
what they
Jacket.
believed in. He's like, he'd always say, what's going to happen when the rapture, what happens when the rapture comes? You know what I mean? What are you going to have to prove for it? He'd say. It's like very poetic, but it's true.
And there's another line. There's another line that you quote at the end, something about the light. What was it?
Oh yeah, you caught that. Yeah, but I dedicated the movie to him, and I said, yeah, turn on your lights. This was his whole theory. It was like he took it from J.D. Salinger's from one of the short stories. The young genius Glass says it in one of his letters to like his older sister. He's like, turn on your lights. He just felt like all the great stories had been told and by other people, and like you sort of had to mine your own experience and your own life for material and look for these unwatched phenomenons basically, and turn on your lights and pay attention to like only what you had to show that no one else does in some way that you understood, in your experience. And that's that was his whole kind of turn on your lights thing. But yeah.
No, I mean there's a lot in the movie. It also feels like I couldn't figure out when it takes place. It's almost like an evergreen movie. Like
Yeah, totally.
this can happen at any time. Like it doesn't necessarily feel like in the 2020s. It could be 20 years ago in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I think my frustration with the movie is the protagonist, and I don't know how I'm supposed to feel, even though I'm sure you're asking the audience to project something into the ending. And
He's a pleasant kid at the beginning, and the teacher is really like, no, you should be drawing, finding a way to find your voice, even and interpretation of these bodies in your even in these things you're required to do in these life drawings, right? And the kid, you see they share this sense of humor at the beginning, and you don't, you see that there's a love in the kid and a love towards the teacher and a love going back to him. You just don't understand the depth of the relationship. Then he loses the teacher, and in the way that he loses the teacher, the idea is that he doesn't understand the relationship. He doesn't know whether or not this guy was protecting him creatively, or what exactly he was nurturing, or if it was grooming or whatever the fuck it was. The love and the love for his work and stuff and the genuine suddenly gets clouded, and he doesn't know if anyone understood him in some way, if anyone understood his work. So that's inside of there without sort of being directly semaphore pointed at with big signs or anything. But and so then you see all that stuff happen. I mean, that's the catalyst for the whole movie. It's just a very angry, insecure. It's like that first taste of like bitterness, or something's taken away from you that was like a compass, and you're just completely misguided. So I empathize with him in that way, but he's definitely written to be pretty angry, mean, condescending.
He's a dick.
Character. He's an asshole. Yeah, he's an asshole. Yeah. And that's the idea, though. And I think like, in some way, though, like, I understand that guy. I've been that angry. Never like to. It's not. That's not based on me. There's a little me in all of them, but it's like you look up to an asshole, and it's like a lunatic with all these convictions. He's like, I think he's innocent, and like, but like, it's all these different perspectives and artists. Like I feel like Robert is probably the. I don't know. I wonder about him as an artist, even. Maybe even skeptical.
Well, he seems to in the movie. The way I read it is when Wallace starts to show the pencils in the Rob Liefeld style. He doesn't wholly reject it, where maybe Miles would be like, yeah, you can do your thing, but I'm doing my thing, and form over authenticity and all this. But it's almost like Robert kind of gravitates. He's like, oh, that's really cool. Like he just wants to be around comics. I think he just wants to be making comics, be around cartoonists. And what I wonder at the end, did he ever pick up a pencil again and make another comic? Like if there was a sequel to Funny Pages 10 years later, is he making comics, or did he start working in a garage?
I think it could go either way. Maybe
I was thinking that like he found his peace at the end, and that's what the whole scene with the comic store was. I know, like when I was watching it, I was like, I wanted to know the answers to those questions as well. But like, and hearing Owen talking about it now, it's just like, oh, that's where his peace was. That's his safe place, his
comic shop,
focus of solitude. Yeah, like everything. Like once he got away from the comic shop, even though he would come back in, and got away and like didn't have all that like stability kind of, and started working out and started working out like at the legal aid office and started living on his own and stuff. It's just like the comic store was his mecca, his Rosetta Stone kind of thing. And I think I kind of understand that now in our discussion about it more than I did when I watched it. But that being said, Owen, I also briefly it took me a while to remember this. We were introduced by Alex Cox at Rocket Ship for like 5 seconds.
That's so funny. Yeah, of course.
I worked at JHU Comics before it was JHU Comics. So like we have like you and I.
Jim Hanley's universe. Yeah.
Yeah, Jim Hanley's. Did you work at the one by the World Trade Center? By the
In
Empire State Building. By the Empire.
Yes, by the
Sorry.
Empire State Building, and I I also worked in the Staten Island store before it was where it is now.
So,
Uh,
so we shot for your listeners. We shot in Jim Hanley's university, the last holdout shop in Staten Island,
yeah,
not New Jersey. It's playing.
Wait, that was the JHU Staten Island store?
yeah,
Yeah, run by Ron Hill. Yeah,
Oh shit. I
yeah,
didn't realize that.
yeah.
Oh
yeah,
wow.
yeah. That like I was saying, like we have this like weird speaking of misconnections, you and I have these misconnections, in terms of like how we keep missing each other. What comic store did you shop at growing up?
Rocket ship, as you know.
Hmm.
But there was like a store. I mean, maybe the store in actually like JHU and how we use it with the Image Comics section and the underground box that he's selling, like uh is a little actually more of a double of a store that I grew up in, which I think explains the sort of like cultural confusion that comics stores kind of pose, a little bit better than maybe something like Rocket Ship, which is very specialized, emphasis on
Boutique.
art comics, indie comic, whatever you want to,
Yeah.
underground comics, whatever you want to call it, alternative comics. Everyone has their own phrase for this. New wave, if you're in the 80s, new wave comics. But there was a store called Alex's MVP, on Third Avenue and 89th Street that had like a Marvel mural outside. Someone painted like the Hulk and the Spider-Man. You go in, it's like, it's like a Yankees game is on, and they're selling it's Alex's MVP cards and comics. So they'd sell baseball cards. They had the big like Marvel comics sold here. All the new comics were out, Wizard magazine and all that stuff. But then the back issues, it's like, oh, they have an Archie box. Oh, they have a Funny Animal box. Oh, they have underground comics. Oh, I can slowly go here and just pay and buy Crumb comics and Weirdos for, and Zap, you know, uh 80s reprints, for cover price, and just slowly, you know, milk, milk at the tit of this fucking one box that they have in the back that I had to, I was like, are you sure you're allowed? And I was like 14, this is sort of for just adults. And that had all the Peter bags and everything, and the crumbs and everything. So like, to me, it was like, well, that still existed, but it was like, and I'd buy weird shit. And, I was also into like lots of different stuff. I was less into superhero stuff, and I loved Jack Kirby. So I'd be getting the like Monsters on the Prowl and like all this silly other stuff that they just had for a couple bucks in the box. And are slowly building a comics collection out of just like the fun, cheap stuff and the affordable stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he did.
Look at this splash page. Look at this
Where
splash
creatures
page.
roam. Is that what it is? Oh,
I know you show me that is such a good
I
drawing.
was showing that to you.
Best
It's
mummy
so
drawing I've ever
amazing.
seen.
Yeah, it's where creatures roam number 8.
What I think is
Look at this for
effective about
inspiration.
that is that,
Huh?
well, what's amazing about that drawing, I think, is the gauze on the mummy are actually to scale, but there's so many gauze because it's a gigantic ass mummy.
Yep.
Yeah, look at the
Totally.
gauze; they're to scale, so it has all that loopy. Like
Yep.
it sure reminds me of it reminds me of Charles Crumb, who did when he had that whole phase where he was doing those like spiral in the movie. They showed like all these weird
Yeah.
spiral bodies, are just like,
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Well, what's funny is in the movie, Robert doesn't like superhero comics, but yet there's a couple Commandy comics in there. So like I was like, there's
Yeah,
not a connection with Owen and Kirby as well.
Commodity is interesting because, well, yeah, I mean, Kirby and Marvel became interesting to me, the old stuff, because it was like just the weird stuff, like Kirby just and Ditko present such strange images, and Wallywood. It's like all these guys were journeymen. It's like they didn't just do the superhero stuff; they did all these genre comics. And like, I'm not interested in science fiction, but I'm interested in science fiction if it's drawn by Wally Wood and it's coming out of his warped mind,
Sure.
his very unique interpretation of that, And I love genre stuff. I love genre movies. I love horror movies, but like, it's about the artist behind them for the most part. I don't just love horror, but like, oh, great, this guy, like, some people do really just gravitate. So like, I know people who just love exploitation movies and talk about it, just like, oh yeah, this one has like a lot of just that scene where he like is gored by the thing, and like they get off, and it's like, it's about visions to me, you know, like comics, movies. Like it's not about like I don't have like a dying need for horror. Some people do, and that's cool, you know. That's and there's plenty of horror aspect things that I like, and plenty of horror tropes that I don't like. You know,
It's like somebody saying
artist
they like
vision. You
it's like
know,
somebody saying they like splatter, but then you go, oh, but you're watching a Dario Argento movie and like
exactly.
more to it. Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, that's art.
Owen, I remember growing up around because I was around creative people so much. My mother was the deputy director for the New York State Council of the Arts. My father knew Marilyn Monroe and other blonde bombshells and wrote about them for films and review.
Wait a minute. What other blonde
And
bombshells?
the big reel,
Did you know
Jane Mansfield,
Mansfield? Did you know Mamie Van
Mansfield.
Doren?
He knew them all, man. It was nuts, like so Kim Novak, all
Yeah.
these folks. So so yeah, he would write for Films Review and the Big Reel and all this stuff. And so I was in a room constantly where people were talking about creativity. And there are a lot of households where that doesn't happen, right? So you're growing up in a household with Kevin Kline and Phoebe Cates and your grandfather died when you were 7, right? But and then their
He showed
friends,
me
right?
magic tricks, and it was like, you know, he discovered Copperfield, who had the magic thing and all the circus shit he collected. Like, he was a wild character. He was really influential.
Real quick, speaking of magic tricks, so Owen did a couple of magic tricks last time he was in the studio, and I'm showing right now to the listeners. Do you see this bent quarter?
I see it. Yeah.
Owen bent this quarter with the magic of his fingers doing this, and I still don't know how he did this. I have thoughts, and I haven't looked up online the trick, because I just want to stay magic. But here's some evidence of Owen's magic. He comes to my studio and he destroys things.
It's all just for the guise of, am I a mystic? Am I a con artist?
That's inherited. If you ask me, like he got that from his grandfather.
He totally got there. So anyway, the kind of conversations that you are around, the energy of creativity also informs obviously the fact that you are also creative, and Vito, did you have that in your household?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I had my mom and my grandmother were very encouraging. My grandmother was always singing. We were more of a music family than anything. I think one of my uncles recorded an album once, but it wasn't like was with a bunch of guys. But that's pretty much it. My dad was a model at one point, which is how he met my stepmother, who my stepmother's stepfather. Dude, thank God for you, I guess. Like you guys had one mom, one dad. I had stepfather, I had a stepmother, so my stepmother's stepfather had a photo studio, photography studio that was right next door to Christopher Ciccone. Christopher Ciccone is Madonna's brother, and so like there was this weird kind of Madonna energy, and it's funny, it still goes back to music. Like, but whenever Chris was around, there was always this weird Madonna energy.
Mm,
Like, at the
mm.
time they were talking and stuff. So I think he
So
passed
wait,
away.
what got you into making comics? Like, I mean, I know we've discussed things, but I don't know your actual the spark. What's
Oh,
the
me
fire that
or
lit the
Owen?
match? Well, both of you guys. Yeah.
Who are you
Owen, you're the
actually
guest.
asking, first of
I,
all?
I was I was I was asking Vito because
Yeah.
it occurred to me, but we can take turns.
I mean, I was going to the newsstand. I watched Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and I always was a Batman fan. So I just, would go down there. Like there's a little soda shop around the corner that I would go to and, grab an X-Men comic or something.
Mm,
But making comics didn't come, funny enough, it didn't come until I was writing screenplays and just realizing that, number one, in acting, I mentioned this, I think, in our first show. My acting wasn't going the way I wanted to. And so I decided I was going to start writing and doing screenplays. So then I started, offering on AOL, of all places, very early on, does anybody need a script doctor? So the people that wanted script doctors were comic book creators that were doing their own stuff. So I started script doctoring and learning about the making of comics, and just started from there.
mm-hmm.
And
Owen,
like the one comic that I, you know, held on for years and probably never will publish properly is the Mercury Chronicles, which is what you drew a cover for a couple
right,
years
right.
ago. And it was based on an idea I had for a 1930s era serial that would be on cable access. So instead of doing it as a cable access show, I did it as a comic.
Mhm.
See, Owen,
Oh yeah.
we're very similar in our thing, but like,
7 and 8, it was just like, yeah, newspaper comics, and I was learning how to. I just draw 3 panels and would just come up with a gag for the third one, and I had these different characters, and I, wanted to send it to King Features, or King's Features, King Features Syndicate, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had all these different characters who came up with the portfolio and different gags and characters that would come in, and 3 panels was manageable, and um I'd shrink it down on a Xerox machine that I had access to, as was my parents' printer, and you'd minimize them, you'd shrink it down to 70% or something, and you'd see, all the detailed work that you do would shrink down a little bit, and it made you want to make your drawings even better, and you could see, there were little tricks and things, and yeah, I loved it, just like would barely pencil, it just was pretty straight to pen, and I did like. I loved Mad Magazine, and I loved Cracked even more because it was even more outrageous in the 90s, ruder when I was a kid.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, and so I did my own thing of that called Goof Up, and did a parody. I loved the original Nutty Professor, and then like the Eddie Murphy one came out. I did the Cruddy Professor. Um, so like making fun of stuff and making fun of people and drawing stuff, but also like but I also painted and drew, and it wasn't just cartooning, but the central thing was cartooning and funny and faces and funny faces and like observational cartooning. Basically, it was
Mhm.
fun, and as I got older, discovered Crumb, and then a lot of these older newspaper artists, and someone like Milt Gross, and looking at the Ren and Stimpy cartoons in my youth a little closer in high school when John Cristofalusi had that blog spot where he was giving drawing lessons and giving his this is how to draw wrinkle theory and shadow theory for animation, but this applies to cartoon and illustrate, and look at these Johnny Hart comics and BC, and what's like contrasting and interesting about and complicated about these characters and how they're hypocritical, and how to create strained contrast in cartoon. He had like a lot of really interesting ideas, had a really influential blog to me. Obviously, he's like a lunatic, but a brilliant lunatic. Um, so yeah, all through high school and stuff, and then worked in animation for a couple of years in my early 20s. I had like a couple of uh, little things that I did there that was just way too strenuous and difficult, and did not spend long in that work. There's so little money, you could barely make things move with the money in the budget that we had to do this stuff. But it was fun to do. It's just like, as Chuck Jones said, he's like, it's like an actor has the ability like to be able to like animate it. Like if you have a drawing, all you have is the drawing. Like you have to put in the behavior and all the life, and it's just like to actually do that well, and not just in like a lips and blinks kind of
Mhm.
cheapo limited animation Hanna-Barbera way. Flintstones with the little 2 feet drawings, like
Right.
do. But that stuff's fun to do to figure out too. So we did something like we kind of did a Roger Ramjet style. We did it more like that. Where you're just doing a lot of cut variation. We're just like then you cut into a close up and you have lips.
Mhm.
Things barely moved. But have you done animation, Vito? I know Dean has done a little animation.
no, I'm more of a writer letterer, so I don't have that ability um, to cartoon or draw or anything. Which is funny because like one of the things you were talking earlier about was like doing these kind of like test drawings and stuff. And I remember growing up, we used to get these. They'd either be on the back of comics or in I can't remember what other publication I would see them in. Maybe the newspaper. And it was like draw this guy, this turtle like it was like a turtle face, and I would draw it, and I would be very, for 6 years old, impressed with what I did, but I didn't know how to use the mail. Like I didn't know how to like, actually stamp something and how to address it and everything. So I would
Right.
put it in the mail and just put it like, just like in an envelope and just put it in there. So somewhere, my art career has, flown away because I didn't know how to use the post office. But yeah, I mean, I always I still do like layouts.
Scary. It's scary mailing original art. isn't it? Because everyone has at least one fucking horror story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It is horrific. I want to go back quickly to you talking about doing gag cartoons, 3 panel type things. And then I don't know what your longest comic you ever made, but in watching funny pages, obviously it can't be a whole movie of just like people drawing comics. They have to live life in order to draw
I still have
comics.
regrets in terms of like after doing this 4 page comic, it was like the first like kind of like real, really strenuous, ambitious thing I've done in comics in a really long time because I've done a lot of illustration stuff. There's a lot of cartooning and inking and stuff, but like not a lot of long form comics like this 4 pager that I just did. And it was biographical, and it was research, it took a lot. But I wish I had done one thing like that before doing funny pages because it'd been a couple of years. I'd been shifted more into the writing and directing gear, obviously throughout the making of that movie. But I do wish it was like, okay, something like one variation of line weight where you just to go from the thin pen to a brush and
Mhm.
just and black something out with just a brush. One little thing of just someone taking the white out, just seeing the amount of white out
Mhm.
someone
Mhm.
uses on a thing. There's like literally just some tighter specifications of draftsmanship, even in just the variation of characters. Seeing
Mhm.
how Miles draws, and Miles draws a little faster or something, and how his pencils are harder because he's a rougher cartoonist and he's a cruder cartoonist, and he has
Right.
to go thicker with the line, like things like that that show character in a way that you can't. And it's like literally about touch and human
Through
touch.
behavior, through touch and
It did it
behavior.
through style by casting cartoonists with actors and creating an ethos and a human, like what's their fantasies on a page thing. So that's
Right.
inherently, once you match, it's like the Eisenstein thing of like you put two images together, you're immediately in propaganda. You show, the Ku Klux Klan, and then you show like an American flag, and it makes you associate things. Like you show a face of a human being, and then you no matter whose art you give them, and then it's like this is their art, and it gives you another layer to the thing. But showing how someone, Mike Lee did it really beautifully, and he did a film about Turner the painter, you know,
Mm.
and like how he did it in a very interesting character way. It was really fucked up. I mean, he made up a lot of stuff about Turner's life. It is an impression as it's an old painter. No one alive. There's no one alive who knew him. So you just have
Mm.
biography to go back. And he made up this whole thing. Apparently, I mean, because I'm writing something biographical now, screenplay. So I've been looking at how other people approach biography
Mhm.
in fiction filmmaking or
Mhm.
narrative. And he's like Mike Lee's like the greatest, like to me, the greatest like character uh character development, character conscious, character driven storyteller, or character, portrait artist. He's really a portrait filmmaker or something.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
like he gets so esoteric and specific with these characters, and he makes this guy like he's such a dogged, rough guy. Played one of his actors, Timothy Spall, playing Turner, but he has Turner painting with he just is so rough with the brush, and he's molesting his assistant, one of his maids or his assistant or something. You just don't know if it's a sexual relationship or not. It's like seems like kind of abuse, but he's like this rough guy. And then at the end of his paintings, like he'd do this beautiful seaside painting, and then with just like one little spot, he would just like make like this like rough red mark and just like hit it like in front of
Mhm.
all the other people at the gallery. He would go and just fix his painting,
Mhm.
but it's so about the touch, like it's so fucked up. It's such a fucked up example, but it made me think after doing this comic and fucking around with White Attic and just like how what it says. So much of movies, it shouldn't be people explaining who they are. People say one thing, behave a different way. It's like, but you're observing behavior. And that's what I tried to do with my movie, as much as like you don't know everything about what's going on with these people or what they're thinking exactly. You're a little
Mhm.
outside of it. You're a little bit a fly on the wall until you're in close-ups, and you're still a fly
Right.
on the wall. You're
Right.
left out cold of what's happened between the scenes. So you're left with behavior.
Mhm.
It's a fun approach, I think. I'm interested in seeing how it works out for your next film, or at
Thank
least the next screenplay that you're writing. But how much of the procedure are you wanting to show versus how much will make a compelling story, I guess. Like that's the balance I guess you have to play, like Well,
Yeah, I guess it's like the movie has one moment where it's really about the kid drawing, and I feel like it could have even done a little more with it, just like taking it a little slower or something. Like there's things that you see him drawing this comic about Wallace, and you have the Fleischer Brothers cartoon, the Betty Boop in the background, Bimbo's initiation, classic.
Yeah, I think though the part where
And
he's inking the Liefeld ish picture and he's putting a funny face on the abdomen, I
yeah,
think that says everything about who this kid is.
Everything is in that moment.
Yeah,
It's the behavioral fuck you. And even if he's like, I was gonna black out.
unconscious though, he's just spacing out. That's just what you do with
right,
the pen.
right.
Yeah. He can't help himself.
And
Uh
you probably indulge in things and go, yeah, but I got the whiteout pen, like I got the Presto gun. I can fix this afterwards if it doesn't work out. I'm gonna go here. But for someone else's art that's OCD, like lunatic, like that's like completely a disgrace.
Mhm.
Do you think it was a fuck you? It could have also been a fuck you. There's many ways to interpret.
Oh, I think it could have been several things. He could have been getting lost in the ink, in the drawing what
he
what he
got a little
feels.
nervous or
He
whatever.
got nervous, so it could be a case of, oh, I don't feel comfortable inking like this, so let me draw something that makes me feel comfortable to embolden me.
Meanwhile,
And
he's
then
got
it's
Miles
blacked
doing a
out anyway.
massage behind him.
The massage was next level. That was just what is going on. That scene spins out into such a bizarre.
It's
what
not just the adults who are inappropriate in this movie,
That's
impolite and fucked up.
But I was going to say, I feel like Funny Page is clearly a spiritual cousin or brother or sister to not only Crumb, the documentary, but American Splendor.
And Ghost World too.
In Ghost World. And thinking about American
Splendor. To those things. I mean, I hadn't watched Ghost World in a long time until after I finished the movie, but there's a lot of, it's a sort of a rougher world. But
the thing I was going to say about American Splendor is
the comic of movie Ghost World is totally fucked up. I mean, really depraved characters in that.
But in the American Splendor movie, he starts to use the scenes you're watching start to become comics. When Crumb starts to draw
the little old lady in the grocery store taking a long time. Yeah.
Right. Stuff like that. How who am I? What's my name? What does it mean? Kind of thing. That kind of stuff happens. And throughout the whole Funny Pages, I kept thinking the guy's in the basement. This guy Wallace's like weird Rite Aid story, where like we haven't even talked about Louise Lasser. Like, what was going on? Like, how much of that was performance versus that's where she was at in her life?
Oh my God, I don't want to even know. That's
the mystery. So, but Lasser is pretty fast. I mean, like, first leg of production, we shot this movie and then I went and did a reshoot a few years later. I had to wait till after COVID, but in the meantime, I was editing this movie. I was working on other gigs. And then I was like, I really knew that I had to do this reshoot because we hadn't shot an ending and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, after the first leg of the thing that I was most surprised at after making a movie was just like, because I'd done short films, but it's like a mix of non-actors and different people like the movie is. But I was like, doing a feature and you have to manage so many personalities and people like and performances and energize them and not stifle or scare them or critique. You have to be very delicate. And I'm really proud of all the performances in the movie and everything. To me, like the place it succeeds the most is like the performances and the act for me. But like I really, from the first leg and ending, I was like, I need to learn how to talk to actors, like really talk to actors. So I had to sort of become one again. And I joined Louise Lasser, had a class. I remember because I used to hang around Joe Franklin's office, which is its own other portal we could get into another time. But she had an office around the corner from him who had this Meisner class. She studied under Sanford Meisner and learned, it's her method and her whole approach. And the Meisner thing is like, no. It's Strasberg and all the other methods is just like the method thing of like going in and finding something inside of you to unlock. But it's like, no. You just have to be a sponge and you have to react to really pay attention to what's going on out here and pull from that. And you just, when you have, so it's the repetition exercise and you're going back and forth. And when you actually have lines to hold and how to punch them, if someone's if you throw you a left punch, to punch this way because you have to react to how they're doing it, So that's the thing I learned from her the most. But but she was just kind of doing a little bit of a Meisner thing with him in the scene, and is like locking. I asked her after the 3.5 years of working with her in this Meisner class, and while I was cutting, she looked at edits of my movie. She was incredibly another. She really was a mentor to me creatively, and helped me moderate certain performances in the movie and be on this actor here, so you're kind of avoiding this when this person's hamming it up here. I'm like, stuff like that's sort of its own magic trick of misdirection, where you have to
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
hide one thing and conceal another. But so she helped in so many ways. But then I one of the things I knew I needed to go back and film was missing in the movie was we need to see the pharmacy that this thing happened, because we had this stuff of him in the office talking about it, Wallace. So going back and shooting the Rite Aid, I was like, I'm going to put Louise Lasser in the Rite Aid, and I wrote this character for her, and you know, but
Well, what's interesting about the scene too is like Wallace wants to prove his case by having Robert go in and experience the thing he says he experienced, which was this arrogant, this violent thing or whatever. And so you go in and you're kind of like, oh, it's not that lady at the pharmacy. I don't think she's the bad guy. Oh, it might be that dude over there, this older guy. But then we see Louise Lasser, you start thinking, is it her? Is she the one, the aggressor? And she's so aggro in the scene, and she's got like one watery eye, and it's just like this terrifying. It almost becomes a horror movie.
And it's also like there's something you can't put your finger on it, but I don't even know if I realized it when I wrote it. But it's almost like this bad omen. It's like, turn back now. Like, this isn't the place for you. It's like this person popping up, and she's not supposed to be there, broken down, needing a Percocet. The kid's not supposed to be there. It's like she's almost like the voice of reason, but through this cracked, wise person, like just being like, everything's off, or she's just like, you're not. You could tell she's just like, this guy's not supposed to be here. Mm-hmm. And she's actually, it's like how crazy people are actually tapped into something. The light shines through with the cracked people sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like she understands something in her instinct, like, you're not meant to be here. This is not good.
So she's the wisest person in the room, but she's also the most terrifying in some ways.
Yeah, like, she knows she's so lost, and she can see that the kid's not meant to be there or something, just like through her, like this drug haze or whatever the fuck it is,
Right.
I don't know what it is.
It was, and also I was surprised because some of the movie feels like, oh, structurally that makes sense. And then once in a while, it's like, it just feels like magical. Like, where did Owen come up with it? Like, what is happening right now? Or like me and Vito were talking earlier, and Vito was just cracking up. Tell him about the two guys running.
I said the funniest, the I can't remember what the context was, but I said like the scene that is the most powerful, maybe, I don't know how I put it, but was two out of shape cartoonists chasing each other, and the one doesn't tackle the other one, he just taps him on the shoulder. It's like, I can't, like, I don't know what I was grabbing onto there, but I was like, that is the most realistic thing I think I've ever seen. Just like,
what are they, because he doesn't even know, why is he chasing, what's he going to do when he gets to him, because he's trying to chase after him, but it's like, what's he even chasing after? It says everything about the character in the end or something. It's like, you just see him running, and it's like the property is so big and he's so small, and this property chasing after this harking freak who just like, stabbed his friend in the head. It just is crazy. It's like there are very deliberate things where you kind of go, oh, I know exactly what the character is thinking here in the movie, but then there are things where it is just ultimately the character doesn't really know his path, and it's almost revealed in that moment. But
absolutely,
he gets sucker punched, so it's over.
And the one, I mean, there were several times, but the one time I truly wanted to punch Robert in the face was when he opens up the present, his Christmas present from his mom, and it's a Peter bag collection, right?
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, I have the originals. Thanks, but I don't need this because, I guess it's nice. It looks.
Would have been nicer for him to lie, though. No, you just thank you.
Exactly. Say fucking thank you.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. Shut up. Right. Like,
of course.
And your mother was thinking about you. She actually thought about what you might like.
Yeah. She actually nailed it. She asked the guy. She did everything right. Yeah.
Right. So,
it's just sad. I mean, but I don't know. Like, I always think about this. Like, do you have to like a protagonist? Like, a movie's job in some way is to sort of like we have to be uh well mannered and polite in society, but a movie's job in some ways to be impolite in some way and to show you and present to you things that makes you uncomfortable, characters that you don't like, things in, and if there's anything that one doesn't like about the character, it almost reminds them of themselves, or some repulsive aspect of something they've tried to oppress or avoid, or because of politeness or something, you know. But that character is like in a really angry mode. Some shit happened to him, and he's an artist, and he's built so much of his identity and everything out because of this teacher, and with this teacher's fueling, he's without that, and because he's looking for a mentor and chooses completely the wrong guy. And I think in a weird way he chooses someone that he knows is an unattainable person to like want to have to impress, which you need as an artist. Even if you're just writing to impress your friends, you're not just, obviously you want to amuse yourself first, if you're the right kind of art whatever. But I think it's almost self-destructive that he chooses Wallace and he's in this tailspin. Like on some level, it must be conscious, the same way that he knows it's a shitty, dangerous apartment that he's choosing,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like
I think
everyone
there's
watching
some
that scene is like,
self-hatred and goes like, oh, this guy will put me through the ringer, and doesn't even do the comics. They're like, but like, whatever it is.
I have a very I want to move on, a little bit to
Yeah.
what's coming, but I have to know what the frick jumped out of the tank.
Oh yeah.
Like when I had to rewind it, and I don't know what it was. Like I still don't know what it was.
It's like, but yeah, it's that was another thing that went back and shot. It was created this little thread with the Tijuana Bible there, and then that became the through line because it was the beginning, and then it was like, okay, get the Tijuana Bible in the basement, thread that little piece, and then get him out of the basement and use the Tijuana Bibles for that. And I found that way.
But
the it was a dead fish. I don't remember what kind. Purchased a couple in Chinatown, put it on a hook, and had a fishing line, and ripped it out as he was scurrying to run out of this apartment with these old masturbating people. Like we just
sentence alone.
yanked this fish out of the water, and it's in such a flash. We just did it a couple times, but it is a fish. It's not like it's kind of good that you can't tell, that you see something kind of come up.
It's horrifying.
I thought it was a lizard.
It's ridiculous. It's funny because there's so many realistic things in the movie. They're like hyper realism, but then there are things like I'm playing with the borders. Like it's so surreal that it's real, or it's so surreal that it's surreal. That's one moment you just go, yeah, is that so real it's surreal, or so surreal it's real? I don't know.
It's very much like a comic in the sense that the gutters are where the story takes place, is what we've all been told. Like whenever you're reading a comic, it's the gutters where you're filling in your mind's filling in what's happening.
You mean the gaps between the
right, where image to image
in between the panels, the gutters.
And I feel like like things like that are the gutter parts. You know what I mean? Like you could easily just show him walking out after walking in on the two guys, but
right.
Like, that scene is a gutter scene. Like it's very much like we got to get him out of there. How do we get him out of there? We're gonna amp it up even more and more and more.
So, yeah, and it's also obviously summons the beginning. They're literally masturbating the Tijuana Bible that the teacher gave him when he got naked. So it's like another like old naked, and it's like it triggers. And it's the one thing, and that is creepy enough to get him back home and scared, right, because it's the thing that's the catalyst of the movie in a way. So it's like it's wired up nicely, but not too literally, but like all the symbols kind of add up to something, right?
You know what I'd be interested in seeing from you, Owen, at some point in your career. There's a clear Dan Clowes
career, and then quasi.
Come on, man! Like you're a cartoonist.
I'll be right back. Keep going.
But like, you're clearly a Dan Clowes fan. You're clearly a Peter Bag fan.
Love him.
And I'd like to see something in a horror genre, but in the sense of like a Charles Byrne Black Hole type of thing. I feel like you would be good with that.
I mean, this is the thing. Yeah, that's the thing on the side of me trying to figure out is like because so many people after the movie did tell me that the movie has like these horror movie qualities. You know what I
Right.
mean? But I
Right.
think it's effective. I think those are. It's tough because I think those are effective because it isn't a horror movie. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I
Right.
wonder if I went full hog. But I have some ideas. I definitely have some ideas for darker. I mean, something more akin to Black Hole. Basically, I have
Yeah,
like.
because I mean, there's an ugliness to Black Hole that I think is profound and beautiful in a way. And I feel like, even with just the casting and the way the some of the character, the legal aid lady and her compatriot that she wants him to draw a picture of, and the pharmacist, there's like that kind of Dan Clowes ugliness to him. Like the way they're dressed up anyway, like with the hair being all ratty and the way the suit's ill-fitting or whatever. And I feel like there's something there already that I think, like with like a Black Hole, and I'm not saying, hey, go adapt Black Hole. That would be the best thing. But like
Someone's
finding,
doing it finally. It's been talked about for 20 years.
yeah,
But
I think, like a Junji Ito kind of body horror thing, like
or
there's a
something slightly where it's like we start in reality and then we're playing with fantasy. Is the thing I've been trying to figure out, and not thinking specifically in terms of horror, because then you're just thinking in terms of horror
right.
tropes and what you've seen. But I have something that kind of divulges into that a little bit. But it is grotesque in a way. It's not body horror exactly, but I've played around with that. Black Hole is really unique because I feel like he does what something like a movie like The Brood by Cronenberg or Possession, does, where it's like, all right, we're gonna make the splitting of a relationship into a horror movie. And all these people have a genre, and they also have their personal relationship to the horror of that. And then they kind of get it's just becomes a rife territory. But like what's interesting about Black Hole is it's like, okay, we're going to play with the horror. It's playing with the horror of puberty and the horror of a transformation. And it does it through the 1970s, which is its own, you know, personal uh
It's mythological in a sense.
it's so such a strange it's such a I can't imagine what a film of it would be like without it being a, a body horror grotesque. I don't know what this movie's going to be, but I look forward to seeing what someone tries to do with it. It's such a, but the thing I always think about with comics and translating it to movies is it a medium, is the message kind of thing. Like most great comics are great comics because they found the medium to tell the story, and it's a comic, and it's certain, it's the illustration style they settled on, et cetera, et cetera, um, so specifically adapting comics, although I think that Big Baby would be the one I would do if someone had to do any of them.
That's a good one.
Charles Burns would be quite an amazing movie because it also plays with a similar thing to Funny Pages, where it's like about childhood. I mean, he's kind of a mutant character, the Big Baby in the Charles Burns comic, like, but he's like this. That's playing with this Dick Tracy stuff and these like to me like Charles Burns is like secret big influence. Of course, it's the EC stuff. Of course, it's Wally Wood, and he's this great renderer, and all those guys, uh Ghastly, Graham Ingalls, whoever you want to go down the list. But and teen comics, teen romance comics and stuff. But I think Chester Gould and Dick Tracy have a lot to do with his shady shooting gallery of faces and characters, mutant faces. Like you forget they don't include all the weirdest of them in the Warren Beatty movie. But I've been reading some of in the 30s. It's kind of a little goofier, but then in the 40s and 50s, it got really strange and dark, and there's just some really, really strange Tracy characters. I mean, even I don't know. That's a hard thing to translate. But did you ever like Dick Tracy? Did you ever read that?
God, yeah. That was Sunday mornings. My
Yeah.
grandfather would go and get the newspaper, and that was just like you. Like it was a very religious type of thing. I mean, Sunday morning being church time, usually church was spent with four colors. you know.
When Matt Wagner wrote the Dick Tracy miniseries or 12 issues or something for, I want to say Dynamite or something a few years ago,
Hmm.
he called me up to be the artist.
Hmm.
And I was going to draw the Dick Tracy. And then we found out what the budget was. And I was like, I can't. I just can't do it, you know? I think he wound up working with Michael Avon Oming, who's awesome, you
Huh.
know? But yeah, I've always loved Dick Tracy in particular because Prune Face looked like a prune face, and the characters looked like what their names were. So it
Yeah.
was like the fun of it was it's almost like Wacky Packs or whatever. What is it though? No, not Wacky Packs. I actually
Garbage Pail
did.
Kids.
What is it where
Like,
where
well, I said Garbage Pail Kids, but what were
Garbage
oh,
you?
Garbage Pail Kids? Right. It's like that. It's like they look like they're what their name is, you know, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
And
fly face has all these flies rotating
right,
around the ugly face, and like half and half is like melted in one half or
right.
something. Like,
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And I think I might have seen the Warren Beatty movie once, but I was like, oh my God, it was so like four color comics, you know, like and everyone looked like their character and they had a lot of fun with it, you know, and it wasn't CGI, it was practical and all that
There's a
stuff.
bit
it was
of
Baker too,
bit of
did
Dick Tracy.
Gremlins, everything great, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
There's a
Did,
bit
yeah.
of Dick Tracy in Chest Face when you think about it.
but
Oh
again,
yeah.
it's almost like to see them as real. Like there's something about them as these black and white noir comics that are sort of also like cartoony but fucked up and ridiculous. Like what's it? What's his name? Pouch face what's his Pouch Chameleon is one of them, who's like one of these weird ones he brought in 19 in like early 70s. uh but he had like, if you look him up, he's like this weird guy with like this weird like caterpillar neck, like these like weird,
Oh yeah, yeah. I've seen that guy.
he's like
It's
pinching
terrifying.
this weird pouch, and it's terrifying.
It's
It's like,
terrifying.
it's just like a weird, like, imagine if you were like your the chief of police is telling you to go investigate Pouch Chameleon. Like, it's not, it's hard to actually put that on film and do practical effects. That there's
Right.
a Pouch Chameleon isn't in the movie, and Little Face is, and Red,
Little face. So
yeah,
good.
Flat Top or whatever, Mumbles. But uh
It's so good, man. And then I think was it Kyle Baker did the adaptation, so we got
oh
to
yeah,
see
did he
him
do it too? I
do.
never saw his. I loved his interpretation of Plastic Man when he was doing that. I thought that was like such
Oh
a
yeah.
perfect fit for him because he's a funny cartoonist, you know, and like doing
Well, I'll
something.
tell you two things about Kyle. I know Kyle, and
Okay, great.
we were at an art gallery in the East Village, and this was during his tenure on Plastic Man, and we were all hanging out. Whatever, it was an art comic show, and he had lived down the block from the thing. And at one point, we were all going to go get a drink somewhere. He goes, "I got to go home." And I was like, oh, what's going on? He's like, I gotta draw Plastic Man. It's due tomorrow. I said, what page are you on? He goes, oh, I haven't drawn any of it yet.
Yeah,
I
you
just
told me that. That's insane.
it was
I
like
love
I
it.
was, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Are you gonna
I
crank
want to
out?
know the finish of that story. There's no way he went and did 25,
He
30
did
pages.
20 pages basically in a day, and sometimes it looked like that to be honest. But he said he had. I said to him, "There's no way it's going to look good 20 pages." He goes, "I know." But he offered me a trick, and he said the trick was to draw one good panel on every page, and everyone will forgive you.
I've been thinking about that since you told it to me. The one
Oh, I
good
think I told you that.
I was telling someone about that today because I just did a comic. It's like, all right, I always think of things cumulatively because really believe it's like no matter what you do next, you're building off the last thing and what you learned and the lessons from it. So it's like I did funny pages and I've done a couple little commercial gigs, and then I did this like illustration gig and or this comics gig, and it was like, all right, I had 4 pages. I had like a month to script it and do all this research for it because it's about a specific thing. And then I did
Mhm.
had a month and a half to draw because there were a couple like deadline pushes, and I had a couple other gigs that I was, and it took a second to sort of finish it. But then it was like once I was like in the last hours before really the true blue deadline thing,
Mhm. Mhm.
same issues with a film come up where it's like you got to kind of know, you got to find the pocket in the eye of the storm. Basically, you actually do have to go, all right, what's really important for me to illustrate here, and what can I just do really lay out really simply, and if I feel like I have the time to render the faces a little better, but it will just work as silhouettes, I'll block that out over here. It's like it's the same thing as a movie where you just like have to know where to attend to and what's the number one priority, and if you don't know that, you're nowhere basically. You
and it
shouldn't be
and what
drawing the page yet. You shouldn't be in ink, you know?
well, and also you're talking about shorthand because
Yeah.
comics is critically a shorthand art form for many reasons, especially with quote deadlines. And I'm sure you create shorthands when you're making a movie or you're a song or whatever. But I remember when you came to the studio, what, a month ago, and you were working on this 4 pager, and you were arriving at this one panel, and you were telling me about it, and you were going to draw a lot of different figures, and then I think it was one character was going to be on the ground or something.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
said, just draw the bottoms of the feet of the
Feet. It
characters.
says so much more. It's like, that's the funny thing is it's like, you know, everything's so backwards because movies are visual, but you have to sit and write the screenplay. So then you think you have to write all this dialogue that you don't, and you can achieve so much and learn so much about the characters from their if you need to know that someone like once was a doctor, but now they're dishwasher, you just put the fucking diploma in front of them while they're doing the dishwashing or
Right,
whatever the fucking thing is.
right.
You just but you
There,
only
there was a great there was a great
solutions when you're drawing. Tashlin, who trained Jerry Lewis and who is like he started with Warner Brothers cartoons and was doing Daffy Duck and worked his way into doing Jerry Lewis and Bob Hope movies, but he did a Bob Hope movie and was a gag man and did some like visual gag directing on this ghost directing on the movie, but he would illustrate the gags right onto the page. He would draw the visual gags because not everything is a joke gag. But and then writing out a visual gag as text, it's just a medium as the message thing where it's like, well, it's not going to get the laugh to the script reader. Like you're going to have to draw things into the script and fucking insert it. And that's what I'm doing with this new screenplay that I've been working on. That there's fucking drawings like worked right in so you know what the fuck we're talking about because it's so visual.
right.
Things you can't explain.
Well, and then with the thing about comics,
you just people's eyes would just glaze over.
Well, in comics and cinema, image is text. Image is always text. And I was going to just use an example about using behavior without words. William Goldman, the great screenwriter, was talking once about the movie he wrote, Harper, and with Paul Newman. And they had to establish in the first scene that I think he's like a detective or something, but he's broke. And so they needed to show like how he was poor because there was going to be no other instance, and he had to take a job that he wouldn't have taken. And the way they established it was that he goes to make a cup of coffee, and he realizes that his tin of coffee is no more. There's nothing left because he's broke. So he goes over to the garbage can, opens up the lid, and brings out yesterday's filter of coffee, puts it into the thing, and pours hot water over it. Oh, he's a little broke. He's poor. He's using old coffee.
It's not like a check doesn't bounce and like in something literal. Or someone saying, oh no, I'm broke, and now that's the next plot point. Bum, bum. Fucking what was the other thing? It's like, oh, The Drowning Pool. You ever see that movie? That's the sequel to Harper. It was the second Harper, and it's Paul Newman, Melanie Griffiths at the center of it. There's like a teenage James Woods as her boyfriend that Paul Newman has to like rough up, who's like working in a garage. It's a really fucking good movie. If you like the Harper movie, I think that one's it gives it a run for its. I had a poster of it in high school in my bedroom.
Oh, cool.
Drowning Pool.
Never even heard of that.
And and Melanie Griffith is like a sleaze bag. It's like it's a sleazy role for her. She's really good in it.
Vito, did you have any other questions or?
I don't. The only question I have is when am I going to read your book, Owen? Because I want to read your comic. But I mean, like, I want a graphic novel. I want like a full, you know what I mean? Like, I want you to.
Well, that's in the work. I'm trying to do something a little longer for him. I'm sort of working I'm back to 4-page comics. There is a bigger comic that I eventually want to do. I hope soon, but yeah, I'm figuring out a book.
Good.
Yeah.
I think, it goes without saying that you have storytelling ability just based on the hour and a half that we spent talking. Like you can tell a story, and I know from watching your film, you can tell a story. And I know from watching your acting, you can tell a story. And I know that, like you have it in you, you know what I mean? Just like, it's just a matter of getting it out there and, putting it, it's a tough thing, man. I'll tell you that much.
Every time it's just, you kind of like you're back to zero, right?
Yeah.
You're back to zero. And you're just trying to figure out how the next thing you want to do, how the last thing applies. And I really do think it's cumulative. I do think you build on the last thing, and but the priority right now is this movie. I have this movie that I've been working on that I'm really excited about. It's a true story, but I'm learning, it's a whole new learning curve because it's like
Yeah.
done 3 years of research to research the living shit out of this thing. But now I know the true story too well. I got to still interpret it. I got to leave room. So I'm working on that. And so
I want to see them both, but like I'm very I want to say this without sounding too like self-aggrandizing or whatever, but I'm very invested in what you tell next. Like just based on this conversation and just, like just from knowing who you are at this point, like I definitely want to see it.
Thank you. I
No,
appreciate
no,
it.
you're welcome.
It's so fun talking.
Thanks.
I'm right there with you. And Owen, I hope you can still do that story for the project that also Vito's involved in. In fact, I just got a text while we were talking. I'll just show it to you guys as I don't know if it comes through. Oh no,
That's someone's comic.
it's Bob Fingerman just sent me a page from his New York City comic that he's doing.
Bob.
A bit closer. Hold on. No, no.
There you go.
There goes a little something.
That's amazing.
And it's pretty. And he did I think it's 4 or 5 pages, and
That's
this
amazing.
is one of them. And Bob Fingerman's another guy, another great cartoonist.
So we're going to be in the same book, me and Owen.
I loved his new book, Printopia, by the way.
It's great. Printopia. You got it? It's awesome.
Yeah, well, to me, it was like it was tapping into similar stuff that I'm trying to write about in some way, where it's just like, why do we make things? It's a little bit of a big question of funny pages,
Mm-hmm.
And like I just thought Printopia did that so well and lays out so many different kinds of self-made artists that self-publish and go to this print shop, and they're again, it's like each character has their own artistic ethos. And is struggling with that.
It's funny because what you're saying is it's kind of like the thing that bothers me about funny pages is like my initial answer is no matter what kind of a misfit you are or hero or charisma or no charisma, you're trying to make human connections through your art, right? And at the end, I don't know what Robert wants. Does he even want to make human connections? Can he make a human connection?
Well, I think the one at the beginning is so strong that's what the rest of the movie is playing with. But it's such a small chapter in the kid's life. You've had shitty runs in your life where you're just like a piece of shit for a week.
Never.
The movie only exists and like you're seeing the kid. You want to. I feel like with a movie,
that movie was a science fiction movie. Funny pages. All right. I didn't understand. No, I'm kidding.
But I do think a movie has to, it's like you create a model sheet and you go, okay, this is the character I'm playing with. And you want to get every expression. You want to stretch the gamut and stretch them out mainly to tell a story with them going this way and that way, as opposed to just story devices, so I don't know. For whatever reason, I went really hard with that character. I did.
Well, Miles is my hero. I
love it.
All right. Well, well, I think that's it. I was going to ask one stupid question and then we can wrap it up.
Love it.
This could be really dumb, which is if you could write and draw a Marvel or DC character, what character would that be? Or team?
You know the answer to this. You know the answer. Do you? It's Matter Eater Lad.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I need a whole movie of who would play him. It would be
Oh, I know exactly who would play him. Josh Gad.
No. It would be hold on. Because he's not a big guy. He's actually like pretty fit. It would be
That's true. He gets big when he eats a lot.
It would like all of us.
Yeah. I don't know who
like
would play him, but he's just eating stuff. He can eat anything. That's a hilarious movie. Obviously, Plastic Man would be the actual dream, and Joe Dante had it at one point and was going to do it. But because no one's done the funny, people have tried to do the funny Marvel movie, and it's okay. I don't think this is funny, but so the funny DC movie is, it would be Plastic Man.
Well, James Gunn and Matter Eater Lad and James Gunn. He could probably kick ass with Matter Eater Lad, don't you think?
I think I would kick ass with Matter Eater Lad. So you have to. It's like it has to
call up James Gunn and propose the Matter Eater Lad movie, man. Come on,
Matter Eater Lad. Let's think about this for a second. What would he? He could eat a whole museum and get in trouble for all this valuable stuff. Like it's matter, and then he's out on it. He gets kicked out of the group for eating the wrong stuff. I don't know. There's something. What group was he in? I don't know what group he was.
Legion of Superheroes, and you could have him binging. He could be on a diet. He could do all kinds of stuff as part of the narrative. But it has to start with some kind of a fuck up or a crisis. Like, what did I just eat? Like, what's an important thing? Like the Constitution, he eats the Constitution, right? And like then it's somehow gone, like because we don't have that signed piece of paper anymore.
Matter Eater Lad, Batmite, or Doom Patrol. That's what I'm going to say. Because nobody's really done anything cool with Doom Patrol.
I'm going to throw
really fucking out there.
I'm going to throw one more team name for you, Owen, that you should look into. And it's the Inferior Five.
Inferior Five. Okay. And I think that Yancey Street should be I think the Thing solo would be a great thing. I think you guys zeroed into something special there. The Thing solo would be like, maybe that's because like no one's figured out Fantastic Four at all, ever. It didn't even work as a fucking Saturday morning cartoon. Why would it work with Jessica Alba and some fucking dude in a rock suit, you know? or the Corman one or any of them, you know?
I'm looking forward to the new movie. I'm hoping they pull it off, man. I'm rooting for him.
The Thing in his humanity, the Thing trying to be a human being and just trying to do human stuff and not being able to do it because he's fucking rock man. Like, that's a movie. That's a good story.
I did a miniseries with Evan Dorkin called The Thing, Night Falls on Yancey Street.
Yeah, that's what I said, Yancey Street.
Yeah. Oh, you were saying you were recalling my. I see. Right.
On Yancey Street. That was referenced.
Oh, I love The Thing. That's my favorite character. So
I'm saying though, but that to me is maybe that taps into as a movie more what the thing, what's special about. I don't know if you can really capture the Kirby ass Fantastic Four thing. Like,
right.
I don't know if you could do it. Well, I don't know what this new thing will be, but it won't be the Kirby one. You know, it's not.
No, it won't be, and that's okay because like you said, it can't be done. So don't even try it. Like let Kirby live in the comics. Let it be a comic book, and then just take the spirit or an adaptation. To me, it's always an adaptation.
Nobody has done what Tim Burton has done with the Batman thing, and everyone has tried. I don't even think that what's his name, the British guy,
Nolan, Christopher Nolan.
I don't even think Chris Nolan can hold the tiniest candle to what Tim Burton did. And Tim Burton set the bar for reinterpretation of a popular character and thing in the 80s, and then it was so popular that Warren Beatty goes, I've always had a fondness for Dick Tracy. Let me do my psychotic vanity project here. I mean, and it's the best psychotic vanity project of all time. But it kind of set, you think all this fucking IP shit that we're in right now, this Barbie shitscape, is like, it's actually predates. It's all because of Batman and Dick Tracy and Flash Gordon and 80s and the fucking like when the cartoons all shifted to G.I. Joe and to sell toys, it was all the 80s. We're just kind of trapped in the 80s again with this IP shit, right?
I'll tell you my favorite Batman, what I consider a great Batman adaptation of the character is he also played the Joker, Joaquin Phoenix. So he's done his Joker, right? But his Batman is, I think, a movie called You Were Never Really Here, directed by Lynn Ramsey, adapted from a Jonathan Ames novella.
The Hammer movie.
The Hammer movie.
Joaquin Phoenix going around whacking people with a hammer.
He's Batman. That's Batman. That's his Batman. And I think that's a pretty interesting. That's how I viewed it when I watched it. I
don't know if it knows it, but you know it.
I know it. I don't think it knows.
Which is better.
Right. I get the joy from it, right? All my own.
You ever think about that? Sometimes a movie that knows exactly what it is great, but is the best thing. But sometimes the best thing is a movie that has no idea what it is.
Yeah.
And that's also the best thing.
Right.
We should close out on that right there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Owen. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you as your talent. I think I would be remiss if I didn't do my wife a solid and tell you to tell your mom that Drop Dead Fred is her favorite movie. We were just talking about it literally yesterday.
I love that movie.
So then you have something in common with my wife now too. Uh, Dean, let's give it to him and let's get out of here.
All right. Well, before we do that, you got to flush him down the toilet.
Are you ready?
So I don't know if you know this, Owen, but Vito's office is in a big bathroom, and there's a toilet right next to him. We add the flush later because you can't hear it. You doing it? Boom. Oh, I almost heard a little bit of it there.
I heard a little bit.
That was nice. Well, and I guess we'll do our
I didn't
little.
even get to do a bowel movement. You flushed a little quickly.
Oh, don't worry. At one point, my son came in to pee. There was something in there already.
Oh, good.
You went down with that. Okay.
Did he draw that alien?
He did. This is actually Trogdor the Burninator.
Oh, I love it.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
He's the king.
All right.
Dean.
All right.
Hey, hey.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Owen. Thank you,
Thank
Vito.
you, Owen.
Talk to you guys later.
All right.
Mwah.
Mwah.